Welcome to the podcast, Recording Drums with me, Blair SInta. Today is my good friend Victor Indrizzo. If you don't know Victor, he's probably one of the busiest studio drummers in LA. Also holding the drum chair with Alanis Morissette since 2008, when I left that gig. Victor is an incredible player, super creative, incredible feel. Comes from a kind of cool, unschooled background, and he really worked his way and did what he needed to do to play on albums, to play on film music, and as of recently, kind of get into his own home studio. He'd always had, for close to 15 years, he had studios with friends, kind of collectives, engineers, bass players, keyboard players, but the pandemic kind of forced him, and LA real estate forced him into his garage, so he's recording out there now. Victor, just a great dude. This is a nice conversation. As always, my courses are for sale. Improve Your Groove, Introduction to Recording, Snare Sound Bible. I'm also available for lessons and sessions here at my house. And that's it. Okay. Let's check out the conversation with Victor. See y'all soon.
You started to have from what I know, you started to have studios with friends, and what was that first studio with Vince and Dave, the one on Selma? Was that the first place you kind of had with friends, or did you have something before that too?
I'm trying to think. That may have been the first one. My brain is getting my hard drive is full. I think that was the first one, and that was back in maybe 2010 or 9, maybe even actually. Oh no. Oh wait, no, actually earlier 2006 I had a place. Yeah, that's right. I forgot.
Right? I think it was that, because I was that was when I was playing in Pedestrian, and we were just Bill was around, and oh, that's right. And then you moved downstairs. Oh, right. Now I'm
No. I had a place before that place on Vineland in North Hollywood.
Oh,
I had, and then we ended up moving back in there and taking it over actually later, in 2012, I think. Yeah, the spot on Vineland, I was there with Gavin McKillop and Martine Lenoble and Ari Shine. We had that place maybe 2005.
Oh wow,
that long. Yeah.
Oh, so wait, the place that I know that you had with Joel and Jeff Trott and all that, you were in there before.
No, that was in Hollywood, and that was later. That was 2010. Yeah, I know it's confusing because we went there, and then we went to the place in Hollywood, and then when we lost that place, we went back, and the building was available in North Hollywood, so we had that, and then we got Sage and Sound.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of studio hopping around, but yeah, I was really into having a spot, pretty early on. You
started recording, man. It's funny because I just went to your Wikipedia to kind of refresh myself on some stuff, and there's so many things that I could want to try to touch on, but recording with Lanois for the Willie Nelson record, double drum. I mean, that's one of my favorite. I mean, I love that record, and
yeah, it's a funny one because there's no bass on that record. It's
right.
Just a lot of drums. His concept was the bass drums would be the bass.
Right.
So that was a trip. And
was there a lot of rehearsal for that, or
no,
kind of pre-production?
No.
Wow.
No, it was the scariest. It was the scariest record ever because all Daniel told me was he's don't play anything typical, and Willie would play the song one time, and then we would track it, and no charts. We didn't make any charts, and that's back when I think my brain worked a lot better. My memory was pretty good, and you just do it, and no more than 2 takes, maybe 3 takes of something, but
wow.
Yeah, and all in one room, there, no separation, just going for it.
How did you know Lanois, or what was that connection?
I met him through Scott Weiland, actually. I was working I was working with Scott on his solo album.
Okay.
And when we were working on that, we were saying, like, who would be the ultimate guy we would ever want to work with? And it was Daniel. And so we sent him a cassette of our songs.
Okay.
And he got back to us late in the process, but ended up mixing that record. And
Wow.
And then we just became friends. He went on tour with us for a minute. And then I just started playing with him, and he started inviting me to do things. And it was amazing and scary. And
Right.
And I was newly clean. Like, it was a lot of things all going on, you know.
You and Scott at the time were like, kind of like staying. I mean, answer that, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he went in and out.
Right.
And I was able to stay clean. I got clean in 97.
Right. Okay. And that's kind of when things started to take off for you too. It seemed like, just like studio wise, like.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, because I always wanted to be a band guy. Like, I didn't think that I could be a studio guy. Not a schooled guy, didn't go to school. And I was in a bunch of bands that, would get signed, do stuff and get dropped. And my goal was to be in a band. I didn't really, I don't know. I couldn't see myself doing session. I just didn't think I was good enough, to tell you the truth, but I think that somewhere in there, having that kind of band guy mentality ultimately actually kind of helped out, or like, because the first sessions I was getting, like in the early 90s, where a lot of like punk rock bands were getting signed to major labels, and then the drummers couldn't play to a click track. So I would get called, and I would come and either ghost on it or be credited. And it just kind of snowballed from there. Like, but funny to think now that that's originally like, it's kind of like a punk rock guy,
That can play with a click.
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes some cred away.
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
That's funny. And then, what was the other one? I was like, the Cornell record. Where you the track on that?
Which is funny. That actually came from the Willie Nelson record, because Chris liked that record. And he reached out to me. I think he was talking to Daniel for a minute to produce his record. And then we met, and then he asked me to come play on that. And that was a pretty amazing experience, just because, I wasn't into like the whole grunge thing as it was going on, or I would say I wasn't appreciating it at the time, because we were all about the same age, and just wasn't the music I was into. And I always thought, I was like, oh, the guy's a good singer, but it wasn't anything like, I wasn't like a big fan. And then going to cut the track we did, he was standing in front of me singing, and hearing that voice and being a couple feet away from it was super powerful. I was like, oh shit, okay, I get this. Like, the guy is insanely talented.
Yeah. When you cut the drums, he was like live?
Right there. Yeah. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Just
really?
Singing to me too. It was like, he was like looking at me and singing. And it was like, I mean, I don't know if that was a scratch or what, but it was like, it was pretty amazing.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It was a cool experience.
I remember a similar feeling going in before I ever did gigs with him. I went and auditioned in 2007.
Yeah.
And I remember maybe I must have gone early in or something, and he came in, and he just came in from his car, like out of the street, and he just started like his warm up was almost like, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just like, holy shit, really? And then we just played the 3 tunes, and it was like, okay, damn.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a powerful presence, and he was a super sweet guy. I ran into him a couple times through the years, and he was just always super nice. And
yeah. Yeah. Who did that tour? Oh, that was Greg Upchurch did that tour, right?
Great drummer. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I talked to Rick Markman, who played bass on that tour.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about all that and just hanging with him, and you know, the fact that I got to know him a little and play with him was just like I just couldn't believe it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a pretty cool feeling. Like when you get to work with an artist and like, you know, I don't know, you can take it for granted, or maybe you don't quite understand like why they're, you know, people adore them as they do. And then you're in the room and you see them do their thing and you're like, oh yeah, I get it. Like when you witness it firsthand, you know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I feel like I could elaborate like on that, like a bunch of times, but this is not about me. So, and then when you did that Avril tune, was that like a thing where like, was that like a, did things start to like snowball after that? Or do you feel like things were moving already?
I mean, it was fun. Like, around that time I was playing with Beck, and I think getting in Beck's band at that time kind of opened a lot of doors because, yeah, there were just a lot of producers wanted to use that band. Right. And then after I played on that song, for sure, I had a minute for sure off of that. And it's funny. That was one of those records, and I'm sure you've had plenty of these where you go in, and on that same week, I remember working on another girl's record that I thought was amazing, that didn't do anything, ended up not doing anything. And the Avril record, honestly, like when we were doing it, I didn't think much of it. It was another thing. And,
yep.
And, yeah. And then I couldn't pick them at that time for sure. It's hard to pick which ones are going to be huge and which ones are going to fall by the wayside. You know?
Never been my strong suit. I mean, yeah. I've definitely had that experience like just a lot where you're like, oh, this is huge. This is huge, you know? Yeah. No.
And that's why we're drummers. Yeah. We're not A&R people. Yeah.
So when you're working that much, why did you feel the need to like get a space with other people?
Well, you know, I kind of could see even back as early as 2003, or like, I don't know, you know, I didn't know what the trajectory was. You know, I didn't have a plan. It wasn't be like, oh, I'm going to be a studio guy and this is what I'm going to do. But I wanted to write. My goal always was just to be a part of something. And I always liked working with other people, and just to have a place that I could keep learning about recording drums and doing stuff. And, you know, I don't know, just, I wanted to learn more, and I loved recording. And I figured if I could be around guys and if I could always be around engineers, I would learn more. Sorry about that. We got kicked out for a spam call.
Yeah. I think I got most of what you said. So
yeah. Just like, that early on, I started to see even that it was going to change, because I could see sessions were already changing, the way things were going. You know, when I first started, like I did my first record in '89. So like I got to have a bit of a taste of like, there was so much work going on that like, and there were still all these great, the historic guys we think of, these legends still working, but there would be all this, I called it like B work, or like cutout bin records, that you still got to cut your teeth and do that. But even by 2003, I could see that things were changing. And I figured that, also having a studio would make it so that I could work. And there were always things, smaller projects that were harder to go to a studio, or people didn't want to pay for cartage or all these things. So I was like, I just thought, man, let's have a space. And then also the thing of the sound of the drums. And I'm sure you've encountered this through the years. You might work with an engineer or somebody, and you hear the sound of your drums back and you're like, man, that's not what my kit sounds like, or not how I want it to sound. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that the more I could learn about it, that I could have some sort of control over that,
Interesting. Right. And then, so was it by design to like find a room or have like the engineer friend that you wanted?
Yeah. Always. It's funny. Yeah. I always relied pretty heavily on like finding an engineer that I really liked, right, that we could communicate, and that, we could, it was interesting because also when I first came up, the drum sounds were just drums, wide open drums, very like traditional sounding things. And I wanted to do just some weirder sounds, or like, try and experiment with things. And sometimes guys would be into it and sometimes not at all. Like they'd be like, hey, why take that stuff off your drums? They're too dead, or there was some pushback at times. So I figured if I could have guys that would be into that. And then also like, I wanted to learn more. I knew I could learn from them. I was just always kind of interested in that stuff,
You think engineers and or producers have become more controlling over drum sounds at this point, or is it the same but just different sounds?
I think maybe different. I guess it's so funny because every producer is very different, right? And I think at this point, it's hard to say. I think when you're a younger guy coming up, you might have less say because they don't know if they can trust you. But as time goes on, if I hire Blair, I know what Blair's like capable of, or like you're gonna, I think guys that have been doing it a long time have a wide variety. You'd be selling it short to go, Blair has a dead drum sound, because no, Blair could also have a wide open drum sound. You could have any sound that you want. Right. Yeah, I think producers hopefully are coming to you or us or all the guys that hire and go, oh, this guy will hear the song, he'll know what's right for it. I think that's such a big part of it.
Yeah.
Because
I feel, obviously demos are probably a little more or a lot more elaborate these days than they could have been, we're talking a long time ago too, right? Like years ago.
Yeah.
But the fact that like, people can really get specific with samples and their programming.
Oh yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah. And then figuring out, a lot of that now, right, is like, oh, they want it to sound like the samples or something that fits inside of those samples. And I think, when I first was coming up or playing drums, I wasn't thinking so much about like the sound of it. You're thinking about playing. And then when you start recording, you realize how important the sounds are.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways I was really lucky that I always had such shitty drums when I was a kid that I was like, do all the experiment different ways to get them to sound,
right.
Semi-decent. And in that, I learned a bunch of little tricks but it's funny. I think that's a big part. Like if you're a young guy coming up, it's not just about your facility, it's about the sounds, right? Really, a lot of it's about the sounds, right?
Yeah.
And how to tune your drums and how quickly you can get a sound when, somebody says, oh, that's not it, or,
Yeah. To understand how to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
So when you worked with Lanois, like specifically on the Willie Nelson record, how much thought was he putting into like what he wanted your drums to sound like, or was it really just like, Victor, you do you?
It was a lot. He let me do my thing. The thing that we focused on was having just two bass drums that were pitched differently. So I think I was playing the bigger bass drum because I had one. And then he had a house kit that was always set up and mic'd. His thing was everything's mic'd and ready to go at all times, and always be recording.
Right.
Like record people jamming, record anything in between, because sometimes these little magical things happen and then they get lost.
Yeah.
So that I remember, I'll never forget that. It's just always be recording, like always have something. He'd always have a DAT rolling if he wasn't in record.
Right. It wasn't a HSD thing they thought of, huh?
Yeah.
Always record.
Yeah.
And then, so in those studio, I mean, you always had an engineer, and then you had to go, like, was it COVID? Well, the studio,
Yeah.
Stage and Sound got bought, and you got pushed out of there. But
Yeah. There was always like, the pandemic was actually kind of amazing in that way. And also like a little bit terrifying, but that many years of having a studio, I had a pretty good idea of like where I liked things to be placed or how I liked things to sound. And then I also had the luxury of like, once I got up and running, to like send stuff off to like, 4 different engineers and go, hey, how is this? Is the phase right? What can I do better?
Right.
Figuring out the limitations of the room I'm in. I'm basically in a garage, and then I had to figure out how to treat the garage, like
at your house,
to make it. Yeah.
Did you build out at all, or did you just?
No, I just kind of treated the room. It's funny, actually, with a lot of these kind of picture tiles.
Okay.
Because there's a couple different like layers to them.
Okay.
And so they're great like for like just treating the room, like to get rid of the reflections and stuff. I just kind of had to do it kind of all ad hoc and just, by the seat of my pants. And now I really love it. Like at first it was really scary and intimidating. And sometimes it is hard if you're engineering by yourself, and like the things that are hard if you're doing like a TV show or a movie where there's 100 different cues and you're trying to keep track of all the files and do stuff and do different takes and layer things like that. In those moments, I'm like, oh man, I wish I had an engineer and I could just focus on the playing aspect of it. But other than that, like I really love it.
Right.
It's just, it's convenient, and it's like I get to have it sound the way I want it to sound.
So you had to develop like a system once COVID hit to continue to do like film and commercials and things like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. It was real, and it's funny because really early on when I was like getting into more like writing songs, like I used Pro Tools and stuff like that. And then it had been years before since I had touched it really, because always they were being engineered. So like just getting back into all that stuff again and learning how to do so. And I'm still learning, always learning,
Right.
I think there's like a level of like, you just have to be educated, and just keep learning. And it's still that way with drums still, really. Like I find that I get stagnant when I'm not in the mindset of that I'm a student.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always have to keep learning new things or try and, come up with some new thing that keeps you excited to keep doing it,
Because you're not like a practicer, right?
No, not real. Except in baseball season, I'll sit with a practice pad and watch a game.
Okay.
But it's funny, like even playing the kit by myself, like I just get bored after a while. I love playing with other people. Now I love recording by myself. It's funny, like that I really love.
Right. But
if it's just to sit and play, I can do it for a little while, especially if I've got like, a new little thing going on. Like there's a new sound I've come up with, like on a mic, you get some weird, crazy, like I see your videos all the time and you'll have like this cool sound. Then it's fun to play for 10, 15 minutes because you have this cool sound and it's super inspiring. But after that, if there's not a song to play or other people to play with, I just like,
right.
Yeah.
So your kind of inspiration is more about like kind of like studio tweaking or like a tuning
for sure,
whatever.
Yeah, and I love drums. I love playing drums, but sitting there practicing, it just it depends. Yeah, like I said, but I mean, I will sit for 3 hours every day when baseball's on and just play. To get my hands together, like,
We're a baseball dude.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love baseball.
Okay. Well, we'll have to start watching some baseball because Baseball is never not on in my house these days.
Yeah. I bet. I bet.
I used to hate baseball, and now I really love baseball.
Yeah, it's funny. I was not a sports guy, and somewhere, I don't know, 2006 or something, a friend took me to a game, and I just kind of really fell in love with it. And the thing I loved about it is I kind of equated it to like being a session guy or a musician on a session where you are part of a team, but when you're up, like it's like being up to bat. And depending where your head is at, like clearly if you're in the room, you have the skills to be there. There's a reason you're there. But on any day, you can either suck or be great. And it really depends where your head is at. And for me, like I've never been a guy that was like really confident for whatever reason. And so I always have fought this inner voice that was just telling me I was suck or I was going to mess things up. And so I love that watching baseball. You can see the guys go through it. These great athletes, right? Yeah. That they belong there. But if they get into this little downward spiral, it just goes south until they figure it out. And then it clicks again,
Man, it's crazy to hear you say that because I would never think that about you because you're always so, from what I know, I know you well enough. Like you always seem just very relaxed and cool and like an inner confidence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that could not be not be further from the truth. Yeah, it's funny. Like I think in some ways I've been able to use it as a tool to not be complacent. But there's not, it's rare that I show up to play and I'm not nervous or like, I never feel confident, to tell you the truth. It's like, I mean, some days I think the producers I love know how to make you feel confident and relaxed. Right. And if you feel like you're in a safe place, you're going to then that's great. And then you're not thinking about it. But I would say most times I'm like, that's not the way, I'm not built that way.
Well, I think part of it is being a session musician, you don't always know what you're walking into, especially in film, right? You really walking into, and you got to be on your game, right? An album is one thing or just a tune. You're like, okay, there's presumably one, it's simpler.
Yeah.
Two, you're going to have some time and maybe some input on creativity to really help you kind of gel with the piece of music. But film is like, this is it needs to be executed like this, and let's go.
Yeah, and the reading thing was never, I learned it pretty late. Mm-hmm. I learned in like 2010 or so.
Wow.
Because I had done a movie, I did 40-Year-Old Virgin with Lyle Workman. And on that, there was no reading. We were just, treating it like a record. And then after that, I started getting calls from composers. And I had to tell them initially, I was like, man, I was in band in junior high, so I could read some rhythms. Mm-hmm. But I asked them to send me the charts ahead of time. I said, I'll study and I'll get it. And I went to a friend of mine who was a great reader and like sat with him, and he helped me out through the charts. And then from then, I just kept trying and studying, and now I can sight read. Mm-hmm. And I show up and I don't get the music before, but honestly, every time I have a movie, I don't sleep the night before because it just also feels so unnatural. Like, like you were saying, on a record, you get to be yourself and you can, add what you would do, but a movie's so specific. And for me, it's funny, like odd meters and stuff like that never came very naturally. I didn't really growing up listening to stuff in odd times. So it just like always freaks me out.
Right.
But,
do you feel more comfortable with that stuff now? I mean, because the film thing, it's usually like there's a bar of 7. It's not things in 7. It's like, thing.
No, I definitely am much better now, but I always like, will panic. Yeah, because even then, it's not even like a bunch of bars 7. It's a bar 7. It's a bar 5. It's a bar 3. It's like that stuff still. Like I just get like all tensed up and I always have to tell myself, it's like, just breathe, relax, and take it note by note.
Yeah. So do you kind of practice reading? Do you keep it up? Because the sight reading thing, for me, it's like, man, I've read, we're almost like opposite. I was like over-schooled for me, and it took me a long time to like try to like shed that. I was like, okay, I don't want to sound like that or be like that. And I even like stopped playing on a pad for like a long time because I was just like, I don't want to sound like, I just want a different sound. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the reading thing goes away in a way. It's like a muscle memory, and it will go away. It's in there, but it needs to be used.
Yes. And so, when I have a bunch of movies in a row, it works out great and I feel more confident about it. And then, it's weird. That's a sporadic thing for me. This last week I had 2 movies in a row, and it was great because I was like, okay, I got this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can go months without having to read a chart. And then all of a sudden it's that same, like really panicking again. Mm-hmm. And I always intend to study or like practice that. And then of course, between, other jobs and kids and life, like it just, honestly, I don't get around to it that as often as I probably should. And I would say that's the thing. If I was a younger guy, I would have taken that more serious or studied that. But like I said, that I never saw that as my path. And so, yeah, I wish I would have been more open to those sorts of things, or like even, just, I wish I would have went to school for it.
Do you feel like now it's about counting for you, or is it more just about like recognition of phrasing?
It's probably phrases. Yeah. Counting never works out good for me in anything. It really doesn't. It's funny. I don't use my head when I'm playing. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it's more from the heart, I would say,
sure.
Like in anything. But yeah, if I'm sitting there counting, something's going to go horribly wrong.
I know that's a developed skill, like thinking while you're playing, like a developed skill.
Yeah.
Like for me, that was like playing jazz and like hearing form and or thinking form, especially when it's not just like 32 bars or whatever. Or there's a bunch of, A sections. Like, where am I? Which A section is this? Like, wait, turn your brain on, dude.
Yeah.
But then finding a place where you're not thinking, where you're playing, but you're not thinking, but you are thinking.
Yeah. And the thing that I want to put out there, and then somebody has to come up with this, is a better way for drummers to be able to have their music in front of them somehow. Because, even just this last week, there's this chart and it's 6 pages long, and you're looking literally behind you and trying to play over here. And it's just like, man, like there has to be a better way. Somebody has to come up with something.
I literally had that like a month ago too. I was just like, the chart, I think the chart was 6 pages.
Yeah.
And at some point I was like, okay, I'm going to have to like unfold it. I'm going to have to one hand for a second. You know what I mean? Yeah. Luckily we kind of did it in one take. It was just like it was just some crazy ass rock tune, but it wasn't like overly complicated. It was just that the chart was like ridiculous. So the changes were like all over the place. So.
Yeah. It really like, I don't know, I don't know. There has to be a better way, right? But it's funny, you can't think of it because there's mic stands, there's all this stuff. It's like, where are you going to put it, right?
That's it. It's like your guitar player friend grabs two stands and they spread it out. But you have like a hi-hat mic in the way and a hi-hat, and you're like, you can't hear, That's funny. So how much film are you doing at home?
A little less now. I mean, I'm doing TV shows at home.
Okay.
But movies now, people are going back to studios again. So,
Yeah. And you're happy with like the sound of your room with the treatment in it? Is what kind of floor is in there?
What's that?
Kind of floor is in there?
It's like a cement floor, but I have a bunch of rugs.
Okay.
So it's good. I really like it. I really like the sounds, and yeah, because I don't ever really need like a really big room sound. And nowadays, when I do, it's actually pretty easy to fake. I mean, the biggest difference about now and say even like 2010 was like the plugins weren't as good, and recording something at home, like you couldn't make it sound as good as you can now.
Right.
The technology is it's pretty amazing.
That room, that studio you had with Vince and Dave, I don't know what the name of it was. It was the upstairs one.
Yeah.
Selma. I always loved that room. It was like a small
Me too.
Wood floor that was like,
yeah,
sounded really good.
It sounded great in there. And it's funny because that ceiling wasn't very high really, but It still sounded really great in there.
Yeah.
I think like a lot of things, and this too, it's like you have to play for the room you're in, right? And how you're going to hit the cymbals is going to be different. And you just figure that out. That's part of like the things that get instilled in you over years and years of playing. It's like, oh, what is the capabilities of this room? Should I be playing louder? Should I be playing lighter? Like things you figure out,
Right. Yeah. What's your favorite like gear that's happening right now?
I don't, the thing that's pretty amazing is like the UA stuff was a lifesaver for me for getting, I had mic pre's and stuff like that, but I needed more stuff, and like having those, like the X8Ps, like, and the plugins that go with those, like they're really great.
Are you running outboard mic pre's, or are you all in there?
I have some outboard mic pre's, and I have a bunch of compressors. There's like, there's like some of the outboard compressors I really love still kind of over some of the plug-in ones, but there's a lot of plug-in ones I use. I really like, I don't even know if you need any extra outboard gear anymore. I mean, I have it and I use it because I have it, but do you need it? I don't think you do. I think you could get by without it these days.
I hate to admit it, but I think you're right. And I just talked to Miles McPherson. Are you friends?
Yeah, I know.
He told me he sold all his outboard gear and he's just in the UA stuff.
Yeah.
He's the first person I've talked to that was like literally like, I'm selling my outboard gear and I'm just committing to that. And
yeah. I think now you can finally do that. Like even, I don't know, 5 years ago, you'd think somebody was crazy for doing that. But I think the technology is there. It sounds really great,
Yeah. Are you going to Nashville about a bunch?
Yeah, I've been going out there quite a bit. I'm going out there next week. I'll be out there. And I love going out there, and I love playing with those guys. I don't know that I could do that full time, but it's fun to be in a room with a bunch of guys, and you've got to cut a bunch of songs, and you gotta. There really is that pressure of like trying to nail it in the first take. And
tell me about like your approach, like an LA session compared to a Nashville type session like that.
I think there's just like they want to move it along pretty. It reminds me more of like how movie sessions are run out here, where it's like they don't want to take a bunch of time. Like you want to get it in the first couple of takes, and you've really got to get to the point. So like I think the skill set in that is like hearing something and internalizing it, and then knowing what to do or like what you can add to it. And there's so many great guys out there. I think, maybe a reason that I get asked to go out there is because maybe I'll do some other shaker or weird sounding things that maybe somebody else wouldn't do. I don't know. But yeah, just that thing of having to do it quick,
Yeah. Does that bring you nerves, or is that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so, it's funny. It's like before you're cutting the first song, I feel I'll be really nervous. And then once you get going, then the nerves kind of go away and you settle into it. It's like playing a concert or something. I always feel that way too. It's like the first song is just like, and then you get through the first song, you're like, okay, here we go. And then you kind of relax into it. But yeah, just like, there's that thrill of being in a room with so many people, and usually there's like 2 or 3 guitar players, maybe pedal steel player. It's like it sounds like a record right away, and so that's pretty exciting. And the musicians out there are just phenomenal. Like,
is that is it the same kind of crew of people typically that you're working for?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, there's just a couple producers that hire me out there, and that's how I ended up out there. So it's always like the same cast of characters, basically. Yeah.
And how many days is it usually when you're going?
Man, sometimes I go out there and I literally will go out there for one day and fly back. Or, if I'm lucky, then it's like a couple days, but it's just like in and out.
Wow.
Because we'll do like 4 songs in a day, it just, before, you do 4 songs before 5 o'clock, like you're done.
And you're just bringing a pair of sticks, or not even, or what do you?
Yeah, I'll just bring sticks and maybe a couple weird shakers or stuff like that. But yeah, there's always great gear out there.
Right.
Though sometimes I do wish I could bring some of my stuff, but.
Do you have a kit that lives there, or is it all just rental?
No, there's like I'll either get drums, like if I record at Blackbird, they have a ton of amazing kits there. And then if not, like the Drum Paradise guys out there are really great and have tons of great stuff.
Is that anybody from originally from the LA?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what how that works out. There must be, right? There must be some connection there.
Maybe some connection. Yeah.
Yeah.
All I know is that there's a 80s bell brass sitting in the Drum Paradise in LA and there that I don't think it's used often. I was like, oh.
Yeah. I always asking for the bell brasses. Those are like, I love the snare so much.
You own one? A real one?
No, not a Tama one. I had Orange County Percussion made me one. They made me a couple actually. And I use those 95% of the time. And one even has a head that's probably like 10 years old on it. That's my favorite one.
So if you're getting Angel City cartage, do you have John bring you one of his, or do you use the other one?
I actually use the Orange County ones.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't used the Tama one in many years.
Okay.
The Orange County ones are amazing because they're just slightly different than the Tama ones. But I really love it. And especially the one that has the head that's so old. It's like I'm so scared this head is going to break because there's even like a little crack in it. And I know it's going to go any day. And it's just like, it's been sitting in such a sweet spot for so many years now. I'm like, man, there will come a very sad day, I'm sure.
You'll have to just take an old used head from another drummer.
Yeah. But even it's funny because even when they wear out, there's still something about, they could be different, right?
It's like they sit in there enough. It just becomes one.
It becomes one. Yeah. Do you have a favorite snare drum?
The Hewer.
Hewer. I have that up right now, actually. The Hitmaker one.
Yeah. The 6.5.
Yeah.
I think I bought it because of you, actually. Yeah. I think I either played yours. I think I probably played yours. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I have that up right now. I love that drum too.
Somebody told me he's building some bell brass style snares.
I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's got some amazing craziness going on.
I'm like, what do I need to sell here?
I know.
Wait, did you have a Hewer kit? You had a Hewer kit.
I did. Yeah. And when I got divorced, I sold it, sadly. Yeah, it was mahogany and it was amazing. That's the one I had up at that studio.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that was a beautiful. Actually, who had it before me was Kurt Pescara.
Oh, really? You bought it from Kurt?
Yeah. I think Kurt had it. It was made for Kurt. Kurt maybe sold it back to those guys, and then I got it. And then I sold it. I think, did I sell it back to them? Maybe I did, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then, because somebody had been wanting that kit and asking about it.
Oh, wow.
And now I'm super bummed that I sold it.
You can
such is life, that's the high price of divorces.
What do we do? Just tip a 40 or something?
Spill my coffee right here. Yeah.
I know I have 1,000 more questions. I'm literally like, what, I feel like we're like going through stuff so fast that like I've been thinking about asking you about. Oh, okay. So you work with Joe Chiccarelli a lot.
Yeah.
How much have you picked Joe's brain, and how much have you tried to adopt into your own recordings? It's
funny you say that, because we just did a record last week, and he did something very cool with the Fat 47 that I want to try. All these guys, right? Like, you watch what they do, you emulate things. He does a thing where he takes a Fat 47, he puts it upside down, and he has it over the hole. So there's like a D12 in the kick, but really close to the front head, and also kind of facing down like this. And then takes the Fat 47 upside down, and it's over the top part of the hole. And, I that's the thing I'm going to try this maybe today, actually.
Okay.
But yeah, all of these things. And it's funny, like Joe loves to tape up the hi-hats.
Oh yeah.
And so I've done that, and there have been some crazy Joe things. Like I don't know if you ever worked with him, if he ever did like a hi-hat tent. When we would do really crazy stuff, he would make a tent around the hi-hat. And so you have to put your stick in the tent if I come out.
So there's no room, like no bleed or of anything.
Yeah.
Is that an overdub thing, or that's like a track?
No. Oh no, that's a track thing.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So, but he hasn't done that in a while. That was years ago. I've been working with Joe since I was since 95, I think was the first time I worked with Joe.
Wow.
A really long time ago.
So have you seen him evolve, like Mike?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yes. But his attention to detail is like nobody else's, for sure. Right. Like he's the guy, you can do a bunch of takes and he'll come out and move a microphone like that much. And then like, okay, we're going to do more takes now.
Yeah.
Like he is really, I don't know that I can ever get to that level of detail like him. He just has great ears, and
it's a different level of ears. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes I want to go, I'm more about just capturing the moment, right? There's the thing between engineers and when you're playing, right? It's like capturing that moment, and who knows when you're going to feel it. Is it the first take, or is it on take 17? When do you arrive at that point where you're like, oh man, that's it,
Yeah. Especially in a band situation, a live track situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes once you hit that one, you go past it, and it's hard to get back to that one.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Everybody just lands on the same stage. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a mic I just discovered you might be into, the Alien 8. So it's this guy down in Australia. Have you seen this mic?
I've seen it, I think maybe through you or one of your videos or something.
Bill Molina just turned it on to me.
Right.
And it's insane.
Is that the one that's the figure 8 mic, or no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the figure 8, and it's got 3 different settings to use, either the top capsule, the bottom capsule, because they're turned backwards, so they both face forward.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. And it's got like almost like a D12 sound to it, but then you can, on the front section, it's got more high end, but it really is crazy low end, and it still has attack.
That's cool. Yeah, I have to check that out.
Excuse me. I bought it.
Oh, shit.
Like Bill was using it on this session that I did like a few weeks ago, and he like pulled off the tunnel, the kick drum tunnel, and there was like one mic there, and I was like, dude, what's up with that? He goes, oh yeah, blah blah blah. This mic. He's like, it's the only thing I use now, and I was like, oh, okay. I grabbed my phone and I bought it.
Yeah, it's funny. From Bill, I ended up buying one of the old Unidynes for the snare. Like, I love those microphones. What's that?
540.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the cool thing, right? Like, all the different engineers you work with, you can pick up little things and tricks, or like, hey, why are you doing this? Why do you do that? Like, why are you putting that there? Like, yeah, that's the cool thing about getting to learn all that stuff. And that's the cool thing about the videos that you're making, you know, like, so guys can see that and experiment and figure out how to get sounds and really like, you know, in the world today, like trying to get crazier, weird, different sounds, and how do I approach this? And developing all those skills. Like, it's so important. Like, these are things you don't think about when you're first starting to play drums, right? You're like, oh, I just want to play the drums, but there's this whole big world around it. Like, you know, depending how far you want to get into it.
Are you like a mic, like movement tweaker, not like Chiccarelli style, but like amount of mics or whatever, or do you kind of stay with the setup and just mute and unmute and, you know?
I mean, now I pretty much stay, though I keep adding stuff. I have I get weird little guys. I just got this weird little Akai microwave. I'm going to grab it real quick.
Cool.
Yeah, I was on a session and a guy was using this guy Eves was using this little Akai M8, and it's like it's like a 60s kind of like voice recorder.
Okay.
And then I put that like kind of down on the ground behind me and run it through some crazy compressor, you know. But yeah, microphones are a sickness, really. It's like there's sometimes I have to go, okay, I have everything that I could really, that I need, right? Everything else is just, but generally for recording, I set up a bunch of different mics so I can have a bunch of different sounds. And then, you know, whoever I send the track to, they can mute and unmute things to get different combinations of things, you know?
Yeah.
So if you wanted to sound more traditional drum sound, you'll have that. If you want to have a more freaky kind of crazy sound, you can have that. And even a couple different variations of that.
How many mics, how many channels are you running usually?
I think I'm doing like maybe 13 tracks. Is that right? Yeah. Something like that. Kind of a lot.
Yeah.
And there's like, I think maybe 4 mics that are like more kind of fucked up and weird sounding. And then even one, I've been using one of those Altec salt shaker mics in the room. And I actually I dedicated and put a reverb on it.
Oh, cool.
And so that's there a little bit.
Yep. I love those salt.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. What are you doing for your room? Like, how are you dealing with your room? Because it's a relatively small space.
Right now I have 2 ribbons, 2 Cascades that I love. They're like not expensive mics and I keep them kind of down low.
Okay.
You know, the different studios, sometimes I would have them up high, but with these ribbons down low, it's cool because there's more, you know, I get a lot more low end down there.
Okay. It's funny. I do the opposite. I'm always trying to get the low end out of my particular room because it's just way too woofy.
Yeah. Yeah, for this room, it works out. Like every room's kind of different, right? You just have to find that spot. And, you know, I think I started them up kind of at waist level and then I've brought them down a bit. And then even watching, like, I got that kind of from Kurt Schneider, like where he would have 2 Coles really down low and they just sounded great.
Kurt, it's funny because Kurt was a big inspiration for me in my, like, almost literally my room. And I was like, kind of how I thought about dividing my room, the cement floor. I was like, oh, okay, that'll be okay because, playing in Kurt's place, it was like he made that work and that room sounds great.
It's amazing what he does with that room. And it's like, it's a pretty tiny room. I mean, the ceiling is great, how it's pitched up, but like, man, it's really like engineering and like where he puts stuff and how he places stuff. Yeah. Same way. Like he's a big inspiration for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I was working with him more before I got into this actual room, but I was just like, and he's so fast.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, bam, mic there. I was like, okay, cool. We're doing that today.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just that was really inspiring. Just his space and the way he used it for me was just like a really like great kind of launch pad,
Same. He was one of the guys when I first got set up in here that I sent stuff to. And I was like, okay, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? And, I think that's the other interesting thing too about when you send tracks to people. There are some people that I send tracks to and they're going to mix it themselves and they want to have stuff like they want to have your room mics compressed. And then you do other stuff where I just sent tracks to Chris Lord-Alge and he was like, oh man, he's like, don't put the compressor on your room mics. He's like, I want to be able to do that. So it's like, oh shit, I messed that up. But,
right.
But it's like knowing the difference of like which guy you're going to send stuff to. Is it somebody mixing at home that wants you to have presented in a way that it's like they can just throw it in their track and it's done? Or am I sending it to somebody that's a proper mixer that wants nothing on there, right?
Yeah. And I've had Joe mix tracks that have come out of here. And I purposely went to the sessions when he was mixing just to be like, okay,
yeah,
where am I blowing it and where am I not,
Yeah.
And that's a pretty awesome experience to be able to go like, try to get some stamp of approval, but also obviously more about improving and learning from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because, a lot of it too is apples and oranges for people, right? Or it depends, like again, who's mixing it, like how much control do they want over, like, and I'm sure you run into the same thing where it's like some people want to get a drum track that sounds done and mixed, right? And if it wasn't sounding that way, they'd be like, I don't know why the drums sound this way, like,
So,
and then other.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's it.
So do you make a point of asking now? Like, well, obviously if Chris Lord-Alge calls now, but do you ask other artists like, hey, do you know who's going to mix this or what's happening? What's your process?
I do ask now and like try to figure out what state things are in, and, I would say the other peril of recording at home, is also, sometimes being in a rush and I've got, trying to knock out a bunch of songs and I had something where I sent something off to a producer and one of my overheads was out.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize it. And luckily we caught it and then, before I finished the whole thing. But like that's the one bummer of engineering everything yourself. It's like sometimes, you take it for granted that everything's working, but there still are mics plugged into cables, plugged into a compressor, plugged into this. And something is bound to always go wrong at some point,
And phase is tricky with that too, because sometimes in your room, unless you chuck it in multiple places, you're like, oh, it sounds fine. It's in phase.
Yeah.
But then you put a pair of headphones on or whatever, you look at the waveform and you're like,
maybe not so much. Yeah. Yeah. So that is things like definitely if I try a new mic and a new compressor, like I will sit there and try to mess with the phase stuff and make sure it's sitting with everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's tricky. And sometimes it's so subtle. It's really hard to get until you look at it, right? You can look at it, but.
Have you picked Joe's brain about phase?
No, I haven't.
It's a pretty nerdy conversation, but
yeah, I have not. No, I always just look at his miking technique and where he's putting things. And even it's interesting to me, like what people are listening to, or like where, like their levels of playback, you know. I just did a thing with Nico Bolas, and who's a great engineer. And I noticed he had the hi-hat mic up really up there. And I was like, man, for me, normally if I'm at home, I don't even want that thing in there, barely, you know, or like very little, but he had it up, and it's just interesting why each guy has such different things. I think it's, you take a little bit.
Talking about up in the mix, not physically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. The placement thing to me is baffling too, because sometimes, especially with hi-hat mics, sometimes the placement I see different engineers use, I'm like, really? And then, especially if it's an SM7 and it's like a really tight track, and I'm thinking like, but that an SM7, even though it's so directional, it actually has a really, to me, it has a very kind of organic. It just, you know, compared to a 451, it picks up a lot somehow. And such a tight track, but you're using an SM7. But you know, obviously they know what they're doing, you know. So it's if you were mixing a track, would you put the hi-hat mic in there, or how much hi-hat would you use? To me, it's almost more of a safety thing. Yeah. Because if it's got to be dry, then it's super helpful.
Yeah.
But I have noticed too, sometimes in a kind of more open track, it can help, even if it's like minus 18, and it's just, you know, just a little bit of presence in there, just barely there. So I do think it's important to give the option.
Yeah.
Ride mic, never.
Right.
Never do it.
Right. I record it. I never put it.
Yeah. And the top and bottom tom mic thing, have never tried it. Scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
But
that's too bad. Yeah. Yeah. That's above my pay grade right there. Yeah.
Exactly. I'll add bottom tom mics if we can raise the fee. Yeah.
Top one's hard enough for me. That's good enough. Yeah.
That means I have to tune both heads.
Yeah, exactly. Forget that. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for thinking of me.
Of course. Yep. Thanks for giving me your time. It's good to see you. It's been a minute.
Yeah. Hopefully we can grab a coffee or something soon.
Yeah, let's do that soon. When do you guys leave?
I think like the first week of June.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm excited. Get out of town for a minute. Hopefully things stay cool. I don't know.
I feel optimistic about the summer tour thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. The last tour we did was really fun, but also super stressful. Like everybody just trying to stay healthy and get through it.
Yeah. Wait, I didn't see you after that show.
I took off. Yeah.
You split. It was great. I've never heard Alanis sound so good. It was so good, dude.
It was really fun.
Yeah.
It was really fun. I feel like we got a really good sound guy, and the band just it's crazy. That lineup now has been together 10 years, which is crazy to think.
That is crazy.
Yeah. It just kind of was clicking.
I was sitting with Joel, and at one point I turned around to him and I said, "Man, she sounds amazing." And then like a few minutes later, he tapped me on the shoulder. He goes, "Is she lip syncing?" And I was like, "No, there's no way." And then like a little later in the show, she was getting a little tired, and you heard a little, a little. I was like,
a lot of people thought that also because of her mic technique, how far away, like really like, Ninja sound guy was on it. But she sounded amazing. Here's what I wanted to say. I was thinking about this. We were talking about nerves and things like that. For younger guys that might not be like, savvy or outgoing, there's hope. Like, I feel like I was lucky enough to have a career without hanging out, or like, you know, like I'm the guy that would be shy, would take off after the show, and was still able to have a career. Right. I think, you can be socially awkward. You can be shy. You can be not the most confident, but if you still love what you do and put your heart into it, and just like, you know, let the music do the talking or whatever, like that, you can still do stuff, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like we could probably talk about this for an hour, but I was listening to a Mark Maron podcast yesterday, and they were talking about this exact thing. The ambition versus talent versus just personality aspect of, you know, they were speaking in terms of acting, but the musician thing too, of the ambitious person versus the, you know, super outgoing person versus the, you know, just quieter, really love what the craft part of it, and getting to where you would hope to be if you're not a loud, outgoing, boisterous, you know, personality, but just by nature, and not to say that's bad, right? Yeah, because there are some people that are just naturally more effervescent, right? But yeah,
totally. And I admire that, and have always admired it. And as a matter of fact, it's funny, like, it makes me think of Taylor Hawkins, because he was that guy who had this really, you know, like an outgoing personality and a big personality, and more like how I always think of drummers in general, like where they're kind of louder and they're funny and they're outgoing. I always used to go, man, I wish I could be like that. You know, I wish I could have that thing. But all that to say, like, you can not have those things and still get to do what you love to do. That doesn't have to be a prerequisite for it.
Yeah, man. But, geez. I mean, on two notes, that and just the whole Taylor thing. So, yeah. So
yeah, he was a sweet dude. I hope he's good, and I hope his kids are going to be all right.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Anyway, well, man, it's lovely to see you, my man.
Yeah.
You've always been somebody that I've looked up to. I don't know if I've probably said this to you, but, you know, I don't know if you remember this, but here's a crazy ass story, right? On the day so I played with Alanis from like the last month of 2001 to January of 2006. And there was a day that I was in the studio and I was recording a record, and I got a call from the management saying, hey, she's going to take a break. Like, you know, retainer ends. You know, we're letting you guys go off retainer. So it wasn't like we were fired. We're just like, hey, that's, you know, and I was literally recording a song, and the chorus was like that, like, everything is going to be all right, everything is going to be okay, kind of thing, which was kind of funny. But at the same time, that record came out, and you were on it, and I remember texting you saying like, dude, I'm on the same record as you. And I was like so excited. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, I made it onto a record with Victor. So, yeah.
That's cool.
So
everything is going to be all right.